You're being dramatic, Alyssa, he said without even looking at me, one hand already holding hers, her nails freshly done in red, the same color I wore on our first date. We've both moved on. Why are you making this about you? That was the exact moment my entire body went numb. He said it casually, like I was just a page in a book he already finished reading. After everything I gave him, my body, my mind, my peace. After 2 abortions, 2 C-sections, and 2 years of working double shifts to clean up his mountain of debt. And now, I was watching him press his lips to another woman's hand like it was sacred. Right there. In public. At the exact restaurant where we used to go every Thursday night. The same table. The same wine. Only the woman was different. I felt the blood rush out of my face. I was sure I was going to faint, but I couldn't look away. I didn't want to make a scene, but my hands were shaking, my chest was tight, and tears were burning the backs of my eyes. That's when she turned her head and smiled at me. That woman smiled at me. And in that exact moment, something inside me snapped. But before I could even catch my breath, "Ma'am, you've been standing in the middle of the floor for a while. Do you need help?" It was the waitress. I looked back and they were gone. The only thing left on the table was the pink velvet box I'd returned to him 6 months ago when he told me he needed space. But now I knew what he meant by space. And that was the exact moment I decided. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to make sure he remembered me for the rest of his life. My name is Alyssa Carter. I was raised in a small town just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and if you ever met my mother, you'd know exactly why I stayed longer than I should have with a man like Darren Hayes. You see, my mom always told us, a woman's value is in how much she can endure. And believe me, I endured. I met Darren when I was 23, fresh out of college, idealistic, and still believing in love letters and soulmates. He was older, 30, and ran a local auto repair shop his dad passed down. He was charming, strong, the kind of man who'd open your car door and make you feel safe just by walking into a room. At first, he made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. I fell hard. And fast. We got married after just 11 months of dating. My sisters thought it was too fast, but I told them, when you know, you know. What I didn't know was how much I would lose by the time I knew better. Our first year of marriage was sweet. Candlelit dinners, handwritten notes, surprise flowers at work. He made me feel seen. But then the bills started piling up. Darren's shop wasn't doing so well. And instead of telling me the truth, he started drinking more. The surprise flowers turned into surprise overdraft notices. And when he lost the shop, he told me, "It's temporary. Just a setback." So I stepped up. Took a second job waitressing on weekends. Picked up freelance work. I even sold my grandmother's heirloom ring to pay off one of his credit cards. But the hardest part? When we lost our first baby at 11 weeks. He barely blinked. Just said, "Maybe it's for the best." And I stayed. Then came the second pregnancy, and another loss. This time, the doctors said it was an ectopic pregnancy and they had to operate. I was in pain physically and emotionally. Darren? He dropped me off and said he had errands to run. He didn't even wait. And I stayed. I stayed through it all. Through 2 more pregnancies, both requiring emergency C-sections. Through his jobless months. Through the rumors of cheating that I forced myself not to believe. I even stayed the night I found a text on his phone that read, "Can't wait to taste you again, face blowing a kiss, K." And his response, "Soon, baby. She's barely holding on anyway." I told myself it was a joke. A wrong number. I wanted to believe it. Because believing the truth would destroy me. But now I knew. The velvet box on that table wasn't just a coincidence. That woman wasn't just a fling. He gave her what he stole from me. He replaced me like I meant nothing. But he forgot one thing. I never forget what people do to me. And I always return the favor. I sat in my car in the restaurant parking lot for over an hour. My hands still gripped the steering wheel, but I didn't feel my fingers anymore. Everything was blurry, like I was underwater. I wasn't crying. I thought I would. But the tears? They were stuck somewhere deep, held hostage by the rage that had taken over. He gave her that box. The same box he once used to propose to me under a cheap fireworks show at the county fair. I'd thought it was the most romantic thing on earth. I said yes while eating cotton candy with my face still sticky. Now he gave her that ring. The waitress had left it there, thinking I was with them. She must have assumed I was the one being proposed to. I wasn't. I was the discarded wife. And this woman, whoever she was wearing my future like a dress that didn't belong to her. I picked up my phone. I opened my camera. I zoomed in on the box, still sitting in the passenger seat beside me. Click. Evidence. Then I opened a new folder in my Photos app and titled it The Payback Files. Because if he thought this was over, he didn't know me at all. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in almost 6 years. I called in sick to work. Instead, I drove 3 hours to my sister Brielle's apartment in Raleigh. Brielle was a lawyer. Tough, brilliant, and the only one in the family who saw Darren for what he was long before I ever did. She opened the door in leggings, holding a smoothie, and froze. Alyssa? I must have looked like hell. I hadn't slept. My eyes were puffy. My voice empty. He proposed, I whispered. She set the smoothie down without breaking eye contact. Come in. I told her everything. The dinner. The velvet box. The hand kiss. The text messages. The 2 years of paying for his debts while he worked part-time, and let me do all the hustling. Brielle didn't interrupt. She didn't say, I told you so. She just listened. And when I was done, she walked to her desk, pulled out a drawer, and handed me a thick envelope. What's this? I asked. An open divorce packet. I printed it 6 months ago. Thought you might need it one day. I blinked at her. Then I laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds like crying. She hugged me tight and whispered, You don't have to be strong. You just have to be done. But I wasn't just going to be done. I was going to be unforgettable. That night, I started the first phase of what I'd call Operation Undo. It began with facts. I opened every old bank statement, every Venmo transaction, every Zelle receipt, every time I paid his car note, his bar tab, his bounced rent, or sent his cousin money for him because his Cash App wasn't working. $48,237. That's how much I'd paid for his life in the past 2 years. I printed every receipt. Then I pulled up the text messages I'd saved, screenshots of him admitting the debts were our responsibility. All of it. Then I messaged someone I never thought I'd ever talk to again. Nate Callahan. My ex from college. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. Not since I broke his heart because I thought Darren was more mature. But Nate? Nate was now a financial crimes investigator for the state of North Carolina. I texted him a photo of the folder. You ever seen someone build a fraud case on their own ex-husband? He replied within 2 minutes. You got documents? A whole book. I'm listening. 3 weeks later, Darren got the first call. It was from the tax office. Apparently, he hadn't filed his taxes in 3 years, because I had always done it for him. Only this time, they had questions about where his business income went, why he was receiving PayPal deposits but declaring zero profit, and how he managed to drive a lease car under my name. He called me that night. I didn't pick up. He texted me. Did you report me? I replied with a single photo. The velvet ring box. On fire. Sitting on a dinner plate. Then I blocked his number. But that wasn't enough. Because I hadn't even told you the worst part yet. That woman he proposed to? Her name was Kimberly. She wasn't just a fling. She was my ex-best friend. My maid of honor. And I hadn't even confronted her yet. But I would. And when I did, let's just say, she would regret ever telling me, you deserve better. Because what she meant was, I deserve what you had. And the day I walked into her bridal fitting uninvited, carrying the final envelope that would destroy Darren's life. Let's just say the police were called. But not for me. When I walked into the boutique, the air smelled like rosewater and silk. A place meant for dreams, not for betrayal. Kimberly stood in front of a mirror, surrounded by lace and gaslighting. Her hands were on her waist, admiring the way the gown hugged her fake humility. She looked radiant. And wicked. I was calm. Too calm. Because I didn't come with chaos. I came with closure. She turned around, saw me, and froze like a mannequin that suddenly recognized its reflection. Alyssa? That voice. Sweet. Soft. Like she didn't gut me with a smile. I held up the envelope. The final one. The one labeled for the bride. I said nothing at first. Just walked up to her slowly. The bridal assistant in the room glanced between us like she was watching a drama unfold in real time. Congratulations, I said. I brought a gift. She blinked. I didn't know you knew. Oh, I knew. I knew the moment you stopped answering my calls. When you flaked on my birthday for a work dinner. When Darren started dressing better and smelling like your perfume. Her lips trembled. But you're getting everything you wanted now, I said. A man with charm. And a criminal record you're about to share. I handed her the envelope. Inside were the police reports, the financial investigations, and the fraud affidavit I'd filed against Darren, with Kimberly's name right beside his in more than one suspicious transfer. She went pale. Her fingers clutched the veil, like it could protect her from the truth. You wired my money to him under your own name, Kim. That makes you his accomplice. You thought love would make it romantic. But the IRS doesn't believe in fairy tales. She tried to speak. Tried to say. It wasn't like that. But I wasn't there for confessions. I was there for consequences. I turned to walk away. That's when she whispered. You can't do this. I stopped. My back to her. Oh, sweetheart, I said. You already did this. I'm just the one who won't pretend it didn't happen. And then, like clockwork, the boutique door flew open. 2 plainclothes officers stepped in. Kimberly Jones? She gasped. The assistant screamed. And me? I kept walking. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's legal. And dressed in lace. I drove home with the windows down. No music. Just silence. But not the heavy kind. Not the kind that used to haunt me at night when Darren's lies would keep me awake. This was peace. Until I got home. And found the note on my doorstep. It was handwritten. 3 words. You think you won. There was no name. No number. But I knew the handwriting. It was Darren's. The next morning, I went to start my car, and it didn't. The tires had been slashed. All 4. There was broken glass near the mailbox. I called the police. They told me they'd look into it. But that's when I knew. This wasn't over. Not for him. And definitely not for me. I wasn't scared though. You see, I had already started the second phase. The phase where I didn't just break him. I exposed him. And if he wanted to start a war, he was going to learn just how far a woman could go. When she had nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after the note. Not because I was afraid of Darren. But because I knew what men like him did when they started losing control. They don't fade into the background. They escalate. And that's exactly what he did. It started with the car tires, then the cameras I discovered. One behind the flower pot on my porch and another hidden inside a decorative birdhouse on the fence. Tiny. Wireless. But not invisible. I would have missed them if I hadn't taken a self-defense class after I left him. Something the instructor taught us to check for after breakups with controlling men. When I showed the cameras to the police, they nodded like it was a grocery list. Another report. Another file. Another broken woman trying to stay a step ahead. But they didn't understand one thing. I wasn't just trying to protect myself. I was preparing to end this. For good. I hired a private investigator, Miguel, who used to be a cybersecurity analyst before he left the government. He was sharp, quiet, and expensive. But he got results. Within 2 weeks, Miguel traced the camera signals back to an unregistered burner router hidden in a storage unit. Rented under Darren's name. Paid for in cash. We had photos. IP logs. Dates. More than enough to go to court. But I didn't want him in court. Not yet. I wanted Darren to sweat. To feel watched. To be hunted. Just like he hunted me for years with fake love, empty promises, and lies he dressed up as protection. So I waited. Then one night, I walked into my apartment and found my bedroom light already on. I always turned it off before leaving. I froze. Heart pounding. I listened silence. I reached into the drawer near the front door and grabbed the stun gun, I'd kept hidden since last month. I walked in slowly, one step at a time. Nothing was touched. No drawers opened. Nothing stolen. But on the bed, there was a white envelope. No stamp. No name. Just 3 words again. You took everything. Inside it was a picture of my son. The one who didn't make it. My second C-section. The one that left me in the hospital for 5 days. The one Darren said was God's way of testing us. But this photo wasn't one I'd ever shared. It was taken at the hospital. From the side. Which meant Darren had been there. Secretly. While I was unconscious. While my baby laid cold beside me. My knees buckled. He'd stolen something sacred. Something only a mother should see. And weaponized it. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I called Miguel. It's time, I said. I want everything. Bank records. Emails. Texts. If he so much as sneezed near another woman, I want to know. Miguel responded with just one line. You'll have it in a week. 7 days later, I had more than I ever expected. Darren hadn't just been dating Kimberly behind my back. There were 5 others. One of them barely 20. 2 of them married. All of them used for loans, rent money, credit cards. He was running a pattern: love bomb, seduce, isolate, exploit, ghost. A serial emotional predator. And worse, he wasn't just stealing from women. He was laundering money through a fake foundation, one with my name still attached from when I helped him start it for veterans. A federal felony. My hands shook holding the evidence. Because now, I wasn't just a victim. I was a liability to him. And I knew exactly what that meant. If I stayed quiet, I could disappear into survival. But if I spoke up, if I exposed the foundation, I could bring everything down. But I had to be smart. So I called in a favor, my cousin Crystal, a lawyer in Atlanta. She hated Darren from day one. When I told her everything, she didn't even blink. Get him on tape. One admission. One threat. Anything. Once we have that, I'll do the rest. So I did. I texted Darren from a new number. Told him I wanted to talk things out. That I missed him. He agreed to meet at the old motel we used to go to during our lowest days. I set up my phone camera behind a tissue box on the table. I pressed record. And when Darren walked in, smirking like the devil in cheap cologne, I smiled back. Just like old times. I'm not mad anymore, I said. I just want to understand. And that's when he gave it to me, everything. He laughed about the loans. Bragged about the girls. Admitted he used me. And then with a straight face he leaned in and whispered. You gave me your womb, your scars, your sanity. But I'm a man, Alyssa. I don't owe you anything. And if you try to ruin me, I promise you'll regret it. That moment changed everything. Because now I had it. The truth. On camera. And not just truth, confession. As soon as he left the room, I called Crystal. Send it in, she said. To the feds. I'll handle the rest. But before we could even finish filing, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. And saw a man I'd never seen before. He was sweating, shaking, and bleeding from his lip. He handed me an envelope. Please, you need to read this. I opened it. Inside was a photo of Darren beaten, bruised, and tied to a chair. There was a note stapled on top. You think this ends in court? You don't know what he's done to me. I looked up to ask the man what this meant. But he was gone. I stood at the door for minutes after he disappeared. The envelope still trembling in my hands. That photo. It wasn't fake. It wasn't some prank. Darren was tied to a chair. His mouth swollen. One eye shut. A deep gash above his eyebrow. And he wasn't just beaten. He looked broken. But the note. You think this ends in court? You don't know what he's done to me. Who was this from? One of the girls Miguel had found? One of the women he'd used like he used me? Or was there more? I took the photo and note to Crystal. Her face turned stone cold the moment she saw them. Someone's sending a message. Not to you, to him. You're just the delivery girl. I don't want to be part of a war, I whispered. You already are. Crystal was right. I had ignited something deeper than revenge. This wasn't just about broken hearts or stolen money anymore. This was about everything Darren had buried finally digging its way back up. And apparently, I wasn't the only one he'd buried alive. The next day Miguel called. "We found something," he said. "Actually someone." He sent me a file. Photos. Emails. Screenshots. A woman named Lena Walsh. She met Darren 4 years ago, while I was pregnant. He told her he was in the military. Said he'd lost his wife. Needed help recovering. Played the same game. Kindness, urgency, desperation. Then drained her savings, took her car, and vanished. She reported him to the police, but her case was dropped due to lack of evidence. But Lena didn't move on. She moved underground. Started a blog, then a forum, then a group, tracking men like Darren. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a hunter. Miguel arranged a call. I expected anger. What I got was something different. "I know what he did to you," Lena said calmly. "I've been watching your case. The cameras. The foundation. The confession. You're smart, Alyssa. But this isn't just about getting even." "Then what is it about?" "Finishing the cycle." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that photo of Darren, tied up, bleeding, finally powerless. For years I dreamed of this moment. But now that it was real, I felt nothing. No relief. No joy. No peace. Because someone else had taken my justice into their hands. And if they were watching me now, what else were they capable of? 2 days later, a package arrived at Crystal's office. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. When Crystal opened the files, she went pale. "There's more," she said, pushing the laptop toward me. "Video clips. Screenshots. Secret recordings. All of them taken from inside Darren's own house. From before I left him." I watched, sick to my stomach, as he talked to someone on the phone about the foundation money, and how no one would believe a woman who'd had a mental breakdown. That's what he told people about me. That I was unstable. Delusional. Obsessed. It was the same playbook he used on Lena. And apparently several others. Crystal leaned in. "This isn't just enough to prosecute. This is enough to bury him." But I wasn't sure I wanted that anymore. I didn't want him dead. I didn't want him tied to a chair. I wanted him stripped. Naked before the truth. No more lies. No more stories. Just the world seeing who he truly was. The mask gone. So I agreed to Crystal's plan. A press release. Filed lawsuits. Public charges. Media coverage with the names of the victims. We would expose him. Legally, publicly, and permanently. But just 3 hours after we filed the first motion, I got a text. No name. Just a video. It was Darren. Still tied up. Still bleeding. But this time screaming. Then a voice off camera said something I'll never forget. "You took from all of us. Now we're taking pieces back. One by one." And then I saw it. A hammer. Raised. Then swinging. I dropped the phone. Crystal rushed in. "What is it?" But I couldn't speak. Because for the first time in this entire mess, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a revenge story. This was a reckoning. And I didn't know if I was still the victim. Or if I was becoming something else. I looked at the wall clock. It was 6:16 p.m. At exactly 6:17, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I picked up. A woman's voice. Calm. Cold. Unapologetic. "You started this, Alyssa. But now, you don't get to decide how it ends." Click. I sat frozen. The call had ended, but her voice kept ringing in my head like a ghost that refused to die. "You started this, Alyssa. But now you don't get to decide how it ends." Who was she? Not Lena. Lena's voice was soft, thoughtful, precise. This woman was steel wrapped in smoke. Cold. Calculated. Someone who'd waited for this moment. I grabbed the phone, dialed Miguel. He answered immediately. "What's wrong?" "They have him, Miguel. And they're going to kill him." "Good." "No," I shouted. "Not like this." He went silent. Then, carefully, "You're not responsible for what they do." "Yes, I am," I said, voice cracking. "This started with me." He exhaled slowly. "Then you have one choice. You either pull back, or go deeper and end it before they do. But how do you stop a storm that you created? I turned to Crystal. Her face was stone, but I saw her knuckles go white around her coffee cup. We need to find him, I whispered, before they do something we can't take back. Crystal nodded. We start with Lena. Lena wasn't at her usual meetup spot. Her online presence? Wiped clean overnight. Her email bounced. Her phone line disconnected. Gone. Like she'd never existed. But someone had been watching me. Someone had recorded Darren inside our house. There was one place we hadn't checked. The nanny cams I'd installed when I was pregnant. The ones Darren never knew about. I had hidden them in places even I forgot. But Miguel found the hard drive buried in one of my storage boxes. We watched it together. Hours of footage. At first, nothing unusual. Darren pacing, talking on the phone, doing push-ups, watching TV. But then, late one night, a knock at the door. Darren opens it. A woman walks in. Tall. Elegant. Wavy auburn hair tied in a scarf. Black gloves. A long navy coat. I couldn't see her face, but her voice clear. So this is where you hide now. Darren stiffens. What do you want? You know what I want. She walks in like she owns the place. Sits down. Legs crossed. Cool as ice. You owe me. I paid you, Darren snaps. Not enough. Then she says something that made the room go dead cold. I gave you my daughter, Darren. You said she'd be safe. Miguel paused the video. I stared at the screen. That wasn't Lena. This was someone else. A mother? Who is she? I breathed. Miguel shook his head. I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Later that night, I sat alone on my patio, the California breeze brushing my skin, my mind racing. This story I thought I knew, it wasn't just mine. It was bigger. It reached deeper. Farther. Like Darren had been a fire starter in a dry forest, and now everything was burning. I scrolled through my messages, searching for some trace of Lena. Then I saw it. A message from an anonymous handle. Do you want him alive? That's all it said. Underneath a pin drop location. Just coordinates. Somewhere in the Mojave Desert. I sent it to Miguel. He told me to stay home. But I couldn't. This man had wrecked me. He had stripped me of love, money, motherhood, and sanity. I had bled for him. But I refused to let someone else in this story. Not without knowing the truth. So I drove. 3 hours across sand and stone. No music. Just silence and the sound of my heartbeat getting louder with each passing mile. The coordinates led to an abandoned gas station. Boarded up, graffiti-stained, roof half-collapsed. I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching against broken glass and dust. No one in sight. Then I heard it. A soft creak. I turned around. And saw her. The woman from the video. Standing by a rusted pickup. That same scarf. Those black gloves. And a small pistol in her hand. Before I could speak, she nodded toward the back of the truck. He's in there. If you want him, take him. I moved slowly, heart pounding. She didn't stop me. Didn't move. I opened the door. And there he was. Darren. Tied. Bruised. Barely breathing. His lips cracked. His eyes swollen shut. Duct tape around his ankles and wrists. He looked up at me. And smiled. You came, he rasped. I stared at him, confused. Disgusted. Horrified. Then he said it. Now it's your turn to save me, just like I saved you, remember? And in that moment, I realized something. He wanted to be rescued. He thought this was still part of the game. He believed he still held power over me. I stepped back. Turned to the woman with the gun. Who are you? I asked. She raised an eyebrow. Then dropped 3 words that shattered my bones. I'm the mother of the girl he buried. My blood ran cold. Before I could react. A siren in the distance. Blue and red flashing lights. The woman looked at me. This is your last chance. Walk away, or help me finish what you started. And in that moment, I didn't know who I feared more. Darren. Or me. I stood frozen between 2 lives. Behind me, Darren, bruised and bleeding. His head lolling weakly to the side. In front of me, the woman with the gun, her eyes glowing with a cold, ancient fire. A mother's pain. A quiet rage that didn't scream. It simmered. The sirens got louder. Nearer. You have 10 seconds, she said quietly. 10 seconds to stop pretending you didn't know what kind of man he is. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know, I whispered. She tilted her head. Didn't you? The sirens were almost on us. A storm of dust swirled around the gas station as a black SUV rolled in, unmarked, fast and brutal. She stepped away, back into the shadows. And just like that, gone. I stood by the truck, shaking, unsure of what to do. Darren moaned from inside like he was in pain, but I knew that sound. It was performance. It was bait. Then, the SUV doors burst open. 2 men jumped out. Guns drawn, black vests, no badges. I raised my hands. Wait. I called no one. They weren't listening. They stormed the truck. One of them grabbed Darren. The other shoved me back with a growl. She was here. The mother. Where is she? What mother? Who are you people? I screamed. But they weren't here to answer questions. They threw Darren in the back seat like trash and peeled off into the desert, leaving me choking in dust, the silence ringing like thunder in my ears. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about me anymore. It never really was. That night, I lay on my bedroom floor, staring at the ceiling, pieces of everything I'd believed about Darren scattered like shards around me. Then my phone buzzed. An email. Subject. For your eyes only. From unknown sender 109. Attachment. Casefile_Emily_Reynolds.pdf. I hesitated. Then clicked. Dozens of documents. Court records. Therapist notes. Police statements. News clippings. Emily Reynolds. That was her name. 17 years old. Disappeared from St. Louis. Last seen getting into a silver car outside her high school. The car was registered to Darren Whitmore. I gasped. The same week she went missing, Darren had flown to New York for a business conference. I remembered it clearly. I was 6 months pregnant, and he had left me alone for 4 days. I thought he was cheating, but he was disposing of a body. I read on. Emily's mother, Ruth Reynolds, filed police reports, did news interviews, searched for years. The case went cold. Until one day she vanished too. But here she was. Armed. Hunting. A mother who had buried her daughter twice. Once in the ground, and once in silence. And now she had found Darren. And by extension me. The last document was a photo. Of Ruth, holding a framed picture of Emily. Next to her, Darren. Arm around her shoulder. Grinning. Local businessman sponsors charity for missing girls. I dropped the phone. Threw up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry out of sadness. I cried out of rage. 3 days later, Miguel stormed into my apartment with a newspaper in his hand. They found a body, he said, breathless. Where? Just outside Victorville. Buried under a fake name. My stomach twisted. He threw the paper down. Headline. Local man found dead in desert with missing teen's ID. Police suspect revenge killing. I stared at the photo. It wasn't Darren. It was one of the men from the SUV. They'd killed him. Mistaken identity. They thought he was Darren. And now Ruth was gone again. Vanished into the shadows. But this time, she had left something behind. A voicemail on my phone. I didn't recognize the number. But the voice. Unmistakable. I know what you're thinking, Alyssa. That you should tell the police. That you should be a good person. But tell me something. How many good people walk away from evil and do nothing? Then a pause. You're not good. You're not evil either. You're something else. And it's time you decide which woman you really are. Click. No name. No callback. Just the sound of my world turning upside down again. I took a long walk that night. Down to the beach, where the tide was angry and the wind tasted like rain. That was where Darren had proposed to me. Right by the shore. He had given me a seashell with a ring inside. Said something cheesy like, "Marry me so we can weather every storm." Storms. That's all it had ever been. I thought about all I'd given that man. My womb twice over. My scars from the surgeries, the arguments, the pain. My sanity, piece by piece, year after year. And he replaced me in 6 months. 6 months. For someone younger. Someone easier. Someone who didn't know what kind of devil he really was. But now? Now he knew what it felt like to be hunted. To be prey. To wonder which shadow might carry a bullet. And as I stood there, salt stinging my lips, the waves crashing like a warning, I made a vow. This story wasn't over. Not until Darren answered for everything. I wasn't just a woman with a broken heart anymore. I was something sharper. Something made of bone and ash and unfinished business. And that's when I got the subpoena. Court date. Federal charges. Witness, Alyssa Whitmore. And at the very bottom, defendant, Darren Whitmore. The courtroom was colder than I imagined. Not temperature-wise, but emotionally. Like the walls had soaked up every lie, every scream, every betrayal ever spoken in them. And now they just echoed with ghosts. My name echoed first. Alyssa Whitmore, the clerk announced. I stood up slowly, legs shaking under the weight of 1,000 memories and one unbearable truth. I was about to testify against the man I once vowed to love forever. Darren didn't even flinch when I walked past him. He sat there in his navy suit, clean-shaven, looking like a respectable businessman, not like someone who had buried secrets, lives, and girls under his fake smiles. But I saw it. The flicker in his eyes when our gazes met. The fear. And I held on to it. Because it was the only power I had left. The prosecutor was a sharp woman in her 40s, heels clicking with purpose, hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. But her voice was calm, almost motherly. Ms. Whitmore, she began. Can you please state your relationship to the defendant? I gripped the edge of the witness box. I was his wife. How long were you married? 7 years. But I was with him for 9. And in those 9 years, did the defendant ever display violent tendencies? I hesitated. Because the real answer wasn't a yes or no. It was a scream buried under every apology, every manipulated silence, every gaslight night where I questioned my own mind. Yes, I said. He did. But not the kind you see on the outside. Can you elaborate? He never hit me, I began. But he broke me. Slowly. Carefully. He made me doubt myself. He lied expertly. He stole money behind my back, used my name to take loans. I paid off debts he never even told me existed. And were you aware of any criminal activities? Not until after the divorce. That's when they brought out the photos. One by one, they laid them across the screen. Emily Reynolds. Another girl named Cara Lane. And then 3 more. All gone. All last seen in cities Darren had conveniently traveled to. All girls under 20. He had been careful. But not careful enough. And then the defense attorney rose. He was smooth, older Southern accent. The kind of man who calls everyone darlin', while twisting knives behind his back. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, smiling. You've been through a lot, haven't you? I have. You say you didn't know about these alleged crimes. Yet you lived with the accused for nearly a decade. I didn't know, I said again. Or maybe you didn't want to know? Objection. Overruled. He stepped closer. You say you paid his debts, bore his children, gave him everything. Yet here you are, painting him as a monster. Tell me, is this testimony about justice or revenge? I blinked. He wanted to bait me, make me explode, turn me into the angry, bitter ex. But instead I smiled. I used to want revenge, I said softly. But now, I just want peace. And he's standing in the way of it. Then came the surprise witness. The one no one expected. The courtroom door opened, and in walked Ruth Reynolds. Alive, breathing, and very much ready to speak. A ripple of gasps filled the room. Even Darren's composure cracked. I saw his jaw twitch. Ruth took the stand with the calm of someone who had already lost everything. There was nothing more to take from her. She spoke of the day Emily disappeared. The nights she spent searching parking lots and alleys with a flashlight and a prayer. The anonymous tip she received 2 years later, a partial license plate. Then the years she spent tracking Darren. Watching him. Waiting. I wanted to kill him, she said, voice breaking. But then I saw Alyssa. I saw what he did to her too. And I realized, hurting him physically wasn't enough. He needed to be exposed. And did you break the law? The prosecutor asked. She nodded. Yes. And I'll take whatever sentence you give me. But let the world know what he is. Darren's defense tried to paint Ruth as a madwoman. Said her grief had turned into delusion. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that there were no bodies, no hard proof. But they didn't need bodies. They had patterns. They had bank records. They had texts Darren forgot to delete, some that included locations, threats, and even coded language about cleaning up loose ends. And they had me. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Each day I sat in the gallery, watching as the mask Darren wore began to crack more and more. By day 15 he had stopped shaving. By day 20, he stopped smiling. And on the final day, when the judge read the verdict, he finally looked like the monster I always knew he was. Guilty on all counts. The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others cried. I just stood there, numb. Because it was over. But it wasn't really. Outside the courthouse, Ruth came up to me. She was trembling. Eyes red but steady. I never said thank you, she said. You don't have to. No, she insisted. You survived him. That's harder than anything I've done. We hugged. And for the first time in years, I felt something I never thought I would again. Free. But freedom has a funny way of asking questions. Like, what now? Because even though Darren was gone, the damage wasn't. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. Of a girl. Brown hair. Red scarf. Standing at a corner store in Nevada. A note was scribbled on the back. She's next. Unless you stop him. But Darren was in jail. Which meant someone else was still out there. Still playing the game. And I had just been given a new reason. To start hunting. The day the letter came, something inside me snapped back into place. Not in a peaceful way, but like a bone that had been broken too long and healed crooked. It was painful. But necessary. I stared at the Polaroid in my hand. The girl, the red scarf, the quiet fear in her eyes. And the words on the back. She's next. Unless you stop him. It haunted me. Darren was locked away. Sentenced. Done. But the message didn't lie. It meant something bigger, darker, unfinished. I had spent 9 years being manipulated, used, erased. Now I was the one watching from the shadows. I began with what I knew. Darren had once mentioned a friend, Trevor D., his business partner, who helped launder money through shell companies. I'd always thought he was fictional, just another alibi in Darren's sea of lies. But I was wrong. Trevor DeWitt was real. A stocky man with slick blonde hair, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He ran a digital consulting firm in Reno. Clean books, fake reviews, zero soul. And he was very careful. But not careful enough to hide from someone with nothing left to lose. I flew to Reno under a fake name. Booked a cheap motel. Rented a car. And then I began the stakeout. I watched his office from across the street, drinking black coffee and eating vending machine junk. It took 3 days, but on the 4th I saw her. The girl from the photo. She walked into Trevor's office. Young, probably barely 19. I could see the nervous twitch in her fingers. The way she glanced over her shoulder before going inside. Something wasn't right. And I wasn't about to sit back this time. That night, I followed her. She left the building just after sunset, walking fast down a dim alley behind the office block. I kept my distance, ducking behind dumpsters and cars. That's when Trevor appeared. He wasn't alone. There was another man, taller, meaner looking, with a scar running from his jaw to his neck. The girl stopped. She looked frozen. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the threat. The way Trevor grabbed her arm. The flash of something metallic in the other guy's hand. That's when I moved. I didn't think. I just ran. Hey, I screamed, stepping into the alley. Let her go. They both turned. Trevor blinked, then smiled, slow and cold. Alyssa Whitmore, he said like it was a joke. Didn't Darren tell you to stay out of big boy's business? I kept walking forward. You're not Darren, I said. And I'm not scared anymore. He laughed. The scarred man stepped toward me, fists clenched. But then came the sirens. I had called them 10 minutes earlier. Trevor's smile disappeared. They ran. The girl was crying. Her name was Isabel. She was from a foster home in Elko. Trevor had promised her a social media job with a big payout. When she tried to back out after reading the NDA, he started making threats. She had no family. No one would notice. Except me. The police arrested Trevor that night. He sang like a canary. Turns out, Darren's operation wasn't just about cheating women or money laundering. It was trafficking, quiet, digital, disguised through fake companies and freelance gigs. Trevor ran the Western Wing. Darren had been the face. And there were more. More victims. More monsters. More Polaroids waiting in mailboxes. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a crowd of survivors. Women of all ages. Some still shaken. Others scarred but strong. We created a support group, the Second Flame, for women who were burned but didn't die. I shared my story, my scars, my pain, and they shared theirs. Some days I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Other days I stood tall, fierce, knowing my voice could save someone. Then came the final letter, delivered by hand. No name, just one line. You ended Darren. You ended Trevor. But I taught them. Inside was a photo of a young Alyssa. Me, at 17. Taken without my knowledge. My heart stopped. The message was clear. I wasn't just fighting Darren's demons. I was about to face the origin. That's when I knew. This story wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I was ready.